Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video. My name is Alex Wahid, and in this episode I'm going to be talking about how as a society we can use AI as a helpful tool without weakening our own mental thought. It's not cheating if we're using AI for our work, it's just how we're using it. At the AI Ethics Initiative, we strive for the use of AI to be ethical rather than just a copy and paste system. Um, the International AI Ethics Initiative was founded by me, Alex Wahid, and co-founded by my good friend Max King, who I met at the Imperial Global Summer School, where we both studied data science and artificial intelligence. Mainly, people are worried about cheating when the discussion is the use of AI, and this is mainly teachers. But really, the deeper risk is cognitive offloading. I talked a lot about this in a previous presentation, but when work is outsourced, the hard part of thinking is going towards AI. Even if you've never submitted AI generated work, relying on AI for the first pass, summaries, explanation, brainstorming, often can lead to the weakening of critical thinking over time. The threat, while it is subtle, you really don't realize it, but you are becoming dependent on AI to do these, little tasks like homework, essays, projects, studying, explanations, and even practice. When discussing how AI is used within the classroom, we can often see students using it for essay assignments, like maybe a student has to write a paper on the Industrial Revolution and he just says, "Hey, ChatGPT, write me a one-page, 300-word essay or research paper about the Industrial Revolution." Or they're using it to explain a chapter of a textbook, solve some math problems, which really goes against the point of giving out these math problems, or these essays, which is constant repetitions, which develop these skills that students will need in higher learning, whether it be college or even in a higher level of math class or writing class. And another place we see it is teachers often using AI to make worksheets, examples, rubrics, or even grading assignments, which is something I'm totally against of, because I think that students should be getting their feedback from the teacher themselves, someone that was taught in that profession, rather than just giving out that busy work to them, but really just valuable student information just to AI. And it's not just that AI is baked into learning. That's not necessarily an issue, because it's already baked into learning. So what we really need to do is find a healthy way of using this AI so we can really enhance our learning as a whole. When we associate heavy use of AI and critical thinking, research often indicates that when we use technology for these busy work tasks, it often negatively correlates with this technology. So essentially, as we use it more, our cognitive abilities diminish. Next, I kind of wanted to discuss 4 ways on how AI is actually making us dumber, which is kind of silly, but often we're copy and pasting answers without understanding, which leads us just to not understanding the concept as a whole, and we keep moving through it, and it's kind of just cheating. When you hear in school, you're not learning anything from cheating, that's kind of essentially what this means. Over trusting polished but wrong AI outputs. We can see often that we'll go through a whole problem, and then at the end you can see that the answer may be 3.4, but when you actually compute it by hand, the answer is maybe 6.2, and if you go back in the work, it divided 2 integers wrong, which is a mistake that a student would never really make, but since AI is so confident in that response, it's just going to go with it. Next is absorbing subtle biases in AI-generated content. I'm not going to touch on that super big because I discuss it in another video, so I would urge you to watch that video. And next is skipping reflection, not being able to explain the reasoning. that kind of ties back to the other ones. If you're not able to really understand what an AI is computing, then you're just not going to know what's actually happening within that course or with that topic. And once you see these patterns, you can really easily avoid them because you kind of know the process that comes from these issues. So it's easier to, counteract against it. I want to kind of discuss some of the rules that maybe a student or a person should implement when they're using AI. Um, Really, you should be using AI for maybe an outline of something, or maybe ask it for an alternate explanation. Maybe like if you want to like a better explanation for integration rather than just the basic area under a curve, maybe that would be a concept that you'd want an alternate explanation for. And another way would be additional practice or feedback than your teacher is giving you. I know I'm a victim of this. Well, not necessarily a victim because it's very helpful, but maybe I have a test the next day and I don't feel like the problems I was given was good enough preparation. I will maybe take a picture of that question or some of the questions that I found, somewhat difficult, and say, ChatGPT, give me some questions that are just as difficult, but different in a way. And with that, you're developing, repetition and repetition, because no student realistically is going to be creating their own practice problems by hand and by scratch. So this allows for constant repetitions. But what a student really should be doing themselves is, final structures and wordings of a paper. They should not be going to ChatGPT and saying, how can I say this with sounding the most academic? Really, it should be the student's words and the student's conclusions to get to that academic tone maybe they're striving for. Next is steps for like math or science questions. So this kind of goes back to the practice problems. You don't want the AI to really be solving these problems for you. You really want to be solving them yourselves, because then you're reaping the benefits from the constant repetition that you'd be doing. And then final checks for logic, that's kind of self-explanatory. You want to be knowing why the answer to your equation is 3.5 and not necessarily just, copying down the process for it. That was a long rule. This one's a bit shorter. What AI could be very useful for is a one manual pass. If AI helped me with an essay, I should rewrite. You should be rewriting it really yourself. Really, you shouldn't be rewriting AI responses. You should be just writing it yourself. But that's something you should be doing. Next, if AI, did a math problem for you, you need to redo that problem in a form that isn't just, the shrunken down version that it gives it to you. You should be, using every equation you were given or using multiple equations so you really understand how to solve these math problems. And lastly, if AI vanished, could you do this task again? Would you be able to integrate that equation if you didn't have AI? Or that function if you didn't have AI? If you're not able to redo that task, really, AI is doing too much for you, and you need to be able to go back and, learn these tasks and do these tasks. Third, you really need to be treating like AI is a bias source. Even if 90% of your results are neutral, you need to still question every single result. You need to treat it as it isn't neutral, because realistically it isn't. It's reflecting patterns in human data. And you need to always be asking, what perspective is this information coming from? How could important voices be missing? So how could the minority be missing its voice in this, response? Or how could the majority's voice be overbearing to that minority's voice? And does this answer seem like very overly confident? And lastly, you need to be cross-checking these responses with human results and real sources that have been verified and that are not biased and very neutral. Here is a student version of the ethics framework that we developed here at the International AI Ethics Initiative. Just to go over quickly, scope, where am I allowing AI within my study, ideas, practice, where do I ban it, where do I allow it, uncertainty, if I don't understand it, I really shouldn't be submitting it, evidence, making sure that the work that you're putting down is your own and that it's with your own reasoning, not necessarily the reasoning of AI, and your ability to challenge or contest AI's output. Um, if an AI solved the problem, I can explain how it got there and what the AI actually did. And if something's off, I can challenge that idea and, go against that idea. Ultimately, though, it comes down to how schools support students with the use of AI. Right? They need to have clear rules for where AI is allowed and not allowed, whether that be practice, drafts, and definitely not allowed on tests or graded assignments, but they just need to have a clear, legislation or rules in that sense of where they can use it. Um, Additionally, there needs to be contestation. Students need to be able to explain their answers. They need to be able to back up their answers. Um, for math, that's very straightforward. There needs to be show your work, not just a answer box where they put it or multiple choice. But for essays, they need to be able to explain the logic and their design around that, the structure of their essay, not just necessarily the essay itself, because that can just be ChatGPT copy and pasted. Um, Additionally, there needs to be a process for when AI is used in a misconduct way. It needs to be fair and it needs to be straightforward. It needs to be laid out to students. And I think also there needs to be a safe way for students to talk about how they use AI, not necessarily just it being, pushed down and, be seen as this tool that students use when, they just want to get their work done quick. Because really it is a useful tool, it just needs to be used in the correct ways. The goal here is healthy integration, not necessarily panic and, the want for AI not to be used at all. Quickly, here is my personal rules that I quickly jotted down for how I use AI without getting dumber, especially as a student. I want to use AI to learn and practice, not necessarily pretend to be someone I'm not with these AI generated outputs. Additionally, I'm always going over, making sure I can do the 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 outputs that AI is giving me and making sure that I am checking over it. Additionally, I'm never going to submit anything I can't actually explain. If there's a problem, I'm not going to, if there's a worksheet with a problem on it that I can do, I'm not going to turn in that worksheet until I actually know how to do that problem, whether that mean I meet with my teacher until I know how to do it, or, I watch continuous YouTube videos or keep asking the AI questions that would lead me to being able to do that problem myself. And I think if you stick to this code, you'll really benefit from it without losing the ability to think independently that often comes with the constant use of AI. And to wrap it up, the question really isn't whether we should have AI in our education system, because it's already in our education system. Whether your education system is developed, underdeveloped, or very advanced, it's already going to be there. The real question is, how are we using it? How can we benefit from it? Really, you want to make AI your co-pilot, not your boss. I thank you all for your attention. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I will try to address them as soon as possible. Or if you just have anything to add on, also leave that in the comments. I greatly would appreciate it. Thank you.